Hello, dear perceptive souls. This is Bevin, and I am a compassionate guide for intuitive empaths, light workers, and conscious leaders. I'm also the co-founder of a private global community, 1millionempaths.com, which is an online sanctuary for those who are deep thinkers with huge hearts who care deeply about our world. So if you're seeking a community of like-minded souls, I invite you to join us. You can get more information in the description box below. And welcome to your collective energy reading. Well, each of these readings obviously takes place on a specific day. I see them as universal archetypes, things that all human beings go through, especially those who are more deeply tuned in and sensitive. And today's reading is all about mental energy, right? So I can feel so much mental energy. I've experienced so much of that myself recently. And as I look out into the collective, I see what's happening now. There's so much going on up here with everyone, especially in the logical, intellectual minds. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? When can I get my money? So many things going on right now. So let's dive in. This is a 6-card spread, and I have already pulled everything for you. So let's talk a little bit about the mental center, right? This mental energy. Mental energy is extremely powerful. The ancient Hermetic principles tell us that all is mental. And so what exactly does that mean? All is mental. It means that we are powerfully creating our reality through our thoughts and through our emotions. And as we'll talk about here in just a few minutes, the thought patterns are very tied to the emotions, and they sort of play off of each other. But if we're going to start this reading, there are really a lot of still some polarization going out there in the wider world. There are those during this situation who are more into this energy here. They're saying everything that's happening is a beautiful gift. It is a giant shift for our planet. It is exactly what's meant to happen. Look at how people are going within. Look at how everything is slowing down. Look at how Earth is starting to replenish itself. This is the largest mass spiritual awakening in the world. And I would agree, with this philosophy out there. And then there are people who are in this philosophy, which is, oh my God, what just happened? Do we need to be worried that we're going to get sick? Maybe this is just a conspiracy. There's all of this sort of going into the shadow side of what this is. Our economy is ruined. Finger pointing, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, name your party depending on what country that you're watching from today. And we have this sort of duality, right? And so we've been slowly moving out of the Piscean era, which really started, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And we're moving into the age of Aquarius. And in the Piscean era, we have the two fishes, right? Sort of yin and yang. And we did a lot of exploration of duality, as above, so below. What is earthly? What is heavenly and spiritual? And, the mental energy really gets into this place. And in a way, these two energies are mirroring each other, and yet neither one is looking at the other. They can only see their particular perspective. So if we break this down into an individual, so this is sort of the collective energy, and we break this down into an individual, we have, both of those parts of ourselves. We maybe have a part that's optimistic, that sees things as a gift, even when there's a challenge, that part of ourselves that can kind of overcome, that looks forward to the future. And then we have a part of ourselves that, maybe speaks up and is an inner critic or a skeptic, or wants to point fingers at others, or blame ourselves, or stay kind of stuck in the story of our past, and this defines us. And so we have this duality. This morning as I was getting ready, I had this duality going on inside of me, and this thought cropped up in my mind, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And then I said, I'm just going to acknowledge that. So maybe before I would have been just in this closed eye position, right? The shadow side of myself or the light side of myself would have been talking, and I wasn't looking. I wasn't looking. And when we begin to do that, when we begin to start looking, things change, right? So we'll talk about this in just a moment. But at first, I wanted to bring out the fire energy, right? The fire energy. Because if you have the mental, which is air, right? And then you mix in this element of fire, right? And it adds up to the number 10, the completion of a cycle. So we are literally sort of burning everything down down to the ashes. This is the card of the phoenix, right? Where we're going to burn it all down, all the structures, all the systems, everything that we've known, everything that seems familiar to us. And in that burning, it can feel really scary. So a fire can either be this wonderful campfire that you sit and you watch the stars, or it can be this huge conflagration, which burns everything to the ground. And we get to decide that, right? So the fire in this case, I think really represents in the collective anger, collective bitterness, collective fear, right? And so when you mix air and fire, a little bit of air, like a bellows, can actually get the fire going and actually get the flame going and provide heat and warmth and maybe something to cook over. If there's so much air, say you did a gas with fire, you would have this giant fireball, right? And so we see all different aspects of this. And this is where the mental energy and the emotional energy, and I'm just kind of reaching down here to my gut in that sacral chakra, where the seat of emotions, that deep, deep aspect where we feel, especially feel even in the root chakra, from this survival mechanism kind of energy. And when those get in conjunction and they get rolling together, it can be really difficult to step back and be this compassionate observer. Because sometimes we have a triggered reaction, we have an emotional reaction, and that will bring up memories or thoughts or like, oh no, not again, this is what this thing is, or this person is dangerous, or I need to get out of here, like whatever those things are that come up for us. Sometimes we have a certain thought pattern, and because we're doing that habitually and we think about it over and over and over and we're ruminating, it starts to bring up emotions. It brings up anxiety or fear, whatever that may be. So really the air and the fire, they intersect very deeply. And it's important for us to begin to learn how to notice when this is happening to us. I was talking to someone today after all this happened, and I had these different voices, and this one was saying, sort of the shadowy side, and this one was like the super optimistic. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we acknowledge both of those viewpoints, but also understand that maybe there's something that's sort of in between, right? And I said, I never, until I had my spiritual awakening about 7 years ago, I never really considered my thoughts at all. It wasn't like I was watching what I was thinking or thinking about what I was thinking. I just thought, like, this is my brain. It works. It rolls on by itself. It has this thought. That thought must be true. That must be the way things are. And I never considered that it was just my perspective or it was a habitual thought pattern. And then I began to practice through meditation, through observation, through study, through mentorships, through all kinds of, through trial and error, to start to observe myself, right? So this to me at the bottom would be like drowning in that emotion, and then it brings up all these thoughts, Here's what I should say, here's what I should do, I need to write this thing, I need to send this text, and you're just drowning in this, in one of the readings recently, we kind of got that sort of a drowning energy where we just feel like we're overwrought. And that would make sense right now. There's some really difficult situations in our world right now. And it's bringing those survival instincts and those emotional instincts up for us. But then as we start to elevate ourselves a little bit, and this could be our higher self, in the Abraham Hicks tradition, they call it our inner being, that part of ourselves that knows more. Some people might call that your soul, guidance, your soul guidance. This is the part of ourselves that can look down at the human instinctual part and say, I can see that you're suffering. I can see that you're worried. It's okay. Maybe that thought pattern isn't as helpful. What if we decided to think about it like this? And one of the ways that I've actually practiced doing this is by actually having a conversation out loud. So luckily I live alone with my cat and I'm able to do that. There was someone over to the house today and I was getting into this mode where the thoughts and the emotions were kind of ramping up. And I was like, hold on a second, I'm going to have this conversation. And I actually just had the conversation out loud. And I said, oh, you got to witness like what this looks like. But you could say to yourself, thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate your perspective. Okay, so let's really analyze this for a moment. Let's step back and let's, have a conversation about this. Is that true? Or is that helpful to us to think that way, to believe that way? What might be a more affirming, a more helpful way of approaching this? And I kind of like literally talked myself down, right? So I could feel my stomach starting to tighten and I could feel my heart beating faster. And, your breathing kind of in your face gets kind of flushed and you're just like, okay, you can feel that coming on, right? The thoughts and the emotions are going wild together, hand in hand, skipping through the forest. And I was like, okay, let's just slow this down for a moment. Let's step up here into this compassionate observer and let's kindly question, I should say, everything that's emerging for me. Let's just question that. Does it have to be that way? Where did I get this idea that this was how it is? Or why do I feel really compelled to do something about this right now? Do I have to do something right now? Is there a way I could do this that would be more respectful and kind and communicate this in a different way so that I feel like I'm in integrity and that it's well received by another person? And so this is when we start to practice that, being that compassionate observer. And practice is the key term here. It takes a lot of practice. It's like if we've just been kind of letting those thoughts run, that mental energy run ceaselessly all of our life. And I heard something the other day that said we have like 20,000 thoughts per day. So if you think about that, how much of that are you actually conscious of? I don't think I want to be conscious of all of it. I think sometimes I just need to think to like get things done and the body knows and you have muscle memory and all those things. But when it's really important, when it has to do with relationships, when it has to do with how I show up in the world and how I connect and intersect with other people, I want to be really conscious about how I'm doing that. I want to make choices. I don't want to just be driven by some instinctual, emotional, and thought pattern that I've been doing for a really long time. And I love this card next. This is the 11 of air. So there was a lot of air energy in this particular reading. And this really talks about the mind and the body, right? So we talked about the mind and the emotions. So when I was talking about the emotions just a little bit ago, I said, oh, I actually had these physiological reactions as they were coming up. And my mind said, the heart is beating faster. I feel you getting flushed. Okay, I feel you ramping up. I feel that fight, because in the fight or flight, I go towards fight. Sorry, I'm just fire energy. And I've had to learn how to like talk down that inner warrior. Someone else may have more of the flight, more of the avoidant, and you might have to talk yourself into holding your ground and setting boundaries and speaking up in that moment. I have to talk myself down from that. So whichever way it is, you'll know you'll know which one it is. And sometimes we have freeze, right? We have freeze, which is like, okay, I don't even know what to do here. I feel, I have paralysis, analysis paralysis. And then you have to talk yourself into releasing and surrendering and allowing that knowing to flow in. So let's talk a little bit about how the mind and the body intersect, right? Because if the mind is paying attention to what's happening in the body is a beautiful, powerful antenna for so many messages. It tells us how we feel about a situation, how we feel about an environment, how we feel about another person. We know in our gut if something is right or not right. If we're going to do something, say something, it may feel sort of satisfying in the moment to like get back or whatever that is, or satisfying to like pull back and give the silent treatment. But what we really realize is, no, that's not how I want to show up. And what I've learned in my own physical body is when I hold all of these um, destructive thought patterns, destructive emotional patterns, it actually starts to affect my physical being. It starts to drain me and I'm exhausted, and I get dehydrated, and I just want to sleep all the time, and I don't have any energy and any vitality, and it actually makes my body hurt. So the reason I've entered into this important practice of learning how to be my own compassionate observer is for my overall mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And this is because I decided that if I don't have that, I can't do anything else. I can't be a good friend. I can't be a good family member. I can't be a good leader. I can't do anything if I'm not caring for me. And part of my own caring is managing my mental health, right? It's managing my mental health. And then we come into the 9 of air, really, which is about this beautiful power of manifestation. So if we go back to the Hermetic principle of all is mental, what it means is that what we think is what we create, right? So you think about that for just a moment. If you expect that something is dangerous, if you expect that someone is dangerous or someone is out to get you, or you're going to be cheated out of something, or you're going to be lied to, how many times did that actually come about? And I'm not saying that you wanted it necessarily, but you expected it, right? You expected it. And what happens when we begin to realize that we have control over our own expectations? And so if I am expecting that life is going to bring me beautiful, wonderful, amazing, loving, healthy people, then this is who I'm going to be looking for. I'm like, who is that? Oh yeah, there you are. Okay, there you are, right? If I believe that I'm going to be able to do amazing work with my clients, if I believe that I can make great connections inside my community, if I believe that I have the power to heal my body, and I can change my thinking patterns and my emotional patterns in order to be in a healthier space, then this is what I am focusing on. This is what I'm manifesting, right? And this card, I mean, look at the activation here. Look at the activation here. It's really at the throat chakra, right? So what we speak out is what we receive. And we all have we all have these parts of ourselves that are optimistic, that believe, that trust, that know, that listen to our knowing. And we all have these parts of ourselves, that don't as much, and this is the process. There's nothing wrong with the shadow side. We all have that. And sometimes we do get angry, and sometimes we need to get angry. There are things that could be happening that are unacceptable. There are times when we need to set a boundary. But how do we manifest more of what we want? You see the fire coming off of our fingertips. So this is where the fire energy comes back in, right? But it's a beautiful flame. It's a flame of creation. It's a flame of creation. And she has the sword right here, at her heart chakra, which cuts through. It cuts straight through to exactly what it is that she wants. And our final card for today is this gorgeousness, right? I mean, just take a look at it. Some people would say this looks, this is the Intuity deck, so it's not a traditional tarot, but you might even call this the star card, right? There's a rainbow promise here. It is full on, complete, focus, manifestation. Yeah, there's a shadow, but the shadow is in conjunction with the light. It's not opposing the light, and the light is so much stronger. I mean, this is where we are meant to be. So when we take this journey where we begin to listen, to watch, to pay attention to the thinking patterns that you have, to pay attention to your body's physiological responses to certain things, to ask yourself questions like, when I get triggered, it's time to get curious. What just happened here? What did that remind me of? Is there something inside of me that I need to address? Because now it's actually coming up that there's a part of me that's unresolved. There's a part of me that never got to heal from something. What is that? Because people are mirrors for each other, right? And those who are empathic and highly sensitive and intuitive are more of a mirror. Like, this is why we're here, to be this mirror. And when we're being a mirror, what we want to be a mirror for is not just all of the really harsh, difficult, horrible things that we're seeing in our world, because then we lose our power, right? Our power is when we really realize who we are. We realize that we are a powerful manifestor and creator of our own reality. And not only our own reality, but our collective reality, right? This is what we're working towards. This is what we're moving towards. This is what we're praying for, meditating on, manifesting for our world. Is this beautiful, beautiful, strong connection, the rainbow diversity, the equality, the healthy earth, the value of all human life and all animal life and all plant life. This is what we're going for here. So I invite you to comment below, how are you doing on practicing being that compassionate observer, just watching, part of yourself lifting up out of the moment and going, oh, I can tell I'm getting really triggered here. And what's that about? What could I do differently? And how could I think about this differently? And how might I react differently? Could I just take a pause for a moment? Because fire's great, but fire can also burn it all down. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need to allow everything to come into ashes and then be reborn, right, the next day. Sometimes we need that. But sometimes we just need to be an observer. And sometimes we need to realize that caring for your mental health and your emotional health is the same as caring for your physical health. And right now, this is particularly important. So even though I go out on social media and I see what people are talking about, if I'm not feeling in alignment with that, I will either make a comment, which is bringing in this higher manifestation. Here's what I want to see happen. Or I pass it by. Because getting into this duality, this drama, is not really serving anyone. And it's okay that people are there. It's okay. It's just not my responsibility. And my responsibility is to manage my own life, to manage my own thinking, to manage my own health, to manage, how I show up. That's my responsibility. That's your responsibility as well. And to help people who are also taking responsibility for themselves. And then when we connect with each other, it becomes this, right? This giant web, beautiful light workers and empaths out there, serving, glowing, expanding our energy, expanding our power. Your power is in managing what's inside of you. And then manifesting through your voice, through your message, through your presence, the world that we want for the future. So I thank you, dear ones, for being with me here today. Please click like and subscribe. This helps my messages to get out to more people and helps my channel to grow. I so appreciate your time, and I will see you very, very soon. Namaste.